So I've gone round all these pieces that we've got here, and I've filled, sanded, scribed, and it's all looking all nice and neat. So what we want to do is now that we know we're all good and we've been able to sand, scribe all this nice and easily and accessibly, we can now start gluing our pieces together. Okay, so I've already done the other half of the wing, but what you need to do is now slot in this landing gear section, which does go in nicely onto here, although the instructions do kind of want to get you to put this in as you put the wing section together, both halves together. It nicely slots in, no problem, like this, just to give you a bit more access and everything. So leave this until all your wings all nice and all good. Okay, nice bit of glue in there, and that should be nice. Now you might be looking at it and you might be thinking, you know, you're looking at your wing nice and straight, and the landing gear does actually kind of come down at an angle. Apparently that's actually right, because when we put our wings on, it's not one of these wing sections where, you know, it's nice and straight. Okay, the wing does go up at a bit of an angle from the fuselage, which then lines up with the landing gear coming down straight. Okay, so don't worry about that little angle there, it is actually right. Okay, so just make sure that's glued into place, looking good. And then with our nicely sanded, filled and scribed engine, we can then put this on. Now this engine is, as I thought it would be, a pretty naff fit. Okay, it's not good at all. We're gonna have to do some filling, sanding and scribing. Okay, I think this might need a bit of a sand as well, maybe. I think we're in. Not quite. Almost there though. Okay, as you can see, it is a terrible fit. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the bottom bit lined up nicely and do a majority of our sanding, filling, scribing on the top. Okay, so actually I think I'm going to take this off and we're going to give this a bit of a sanding. So I'm just going to get in a coarse sanding stick out, and just here where our wings meet, it just needs a bit of a sanding down because it's just not getting in there. Okay, I did have to do this lightly on the other section, as you can see with this one, but they always just don't seem to fit right with these engines. Okay, that's going on a little bit better, but we've still got nasty, horrible gaps. So as I say, I want to try and get the underside nice, because as for accessibility of sanding, okay, and filling, it's a lot easier to just sand the top part, however nasty it is, than it is to, you know, try and get in here on the underside. Okay, so if you can get the underside to the point where you don't really need to do any work there, it just makes it easier. And easier normally means neater as well. So that's looking nice underneath, and I don't think we're going to have to put much work underneath. But then we have got this big whopping gap up the top. Okay, just here, you could probably see it on camera, it's quite nasty. It's just right here in the center, there is a nasty gap. And it's not just a gap, it's actually a lip as well. So we're going to have to come in and do some heavy sanding on this side just to get rid of this lip where it meets the wing. Okay, but but that is now all good to be just left to dry. And we want this to dry quite nicely because we are going to be getting in there and really sanding away. Okay, so I'll put that aside for a sec. This is one I did earlier. This has had a good weekend to dry, so we can really kind of fill and sand this in. Looking at the gap, I think we're talking some green putty. Okay, so I'm just going to get my sculpting tool out. We can get some of our green putty and really kind of just let's get it in this gap to get started with. Okay, because as I say, we want to give this some time to dry so we don't get nasty stuff like shrinkage. Okay, and you can actually see how much of a lip there is, how you're getting more filler one side of the gap than you are the other, as you can see. Okay, so I'm really going to have to sand the plastic out that side. Okay, so we've got some filler in there just to get it started, and I'm going to get some filler on that when it's had a bit of time to dry. Probably maybe leave that overnight. Okay, but we are going to give that a damn good sanding. The next thing we've got is now we've got our fuselage section that we can actually finally glue the cockpit to. Okay, now there's no kind of like little tabs or anything in here to guide you or anything. We're just sticking flat plastic to flat plastic, so you've got to be careful about getting this lined up. So I'm just going to put a little bit of Tamiya extra thin just on our flat area plastic here. Okay, and this isn't to like really glue it into place, this is just to hold it, okay, while you adjust it, because I mean there's enough glue there to hold it into place. Okay, not enough to properly glue it down, but enough so that you can just play with it and make sure it's all lined up nicely for when you do actually apply the glue you want to actually glue it into place. Okay, now that is as even as it will go all round, and it's still gonna probably looks like a bit of a filler job. Again, does seem to be quite a few fit issues with this. I mean, I wouldn't say we've had like major fit issues with this kit. It's just one of these kits where you've got lots of, you know, little bits of areas where you need to fill, sand and scribe, which does make it a bit of a kit that you do kind of need to give quite a bit of attention to compared to a few, but then it's kind of fun to do stuff like this as well. So okay, now that is as best in position as it will go. Admittedly, the right side is actually looking like we might not have to do any filling, sanding or scribing, but we are looking like there's a bit of a gap on this left side. Okay, but we'll see how that dries and we can work on that in a bit. But we need to give that a bit of time to dry now. But actually, while we're here, we've got our little I think these are the Bombay doors on the underside. We may as well get this glued into place, which it's not a bad fit, but there is a bit of a gap here and there to sort out as well. Okay, so I'm going to glue this into place, which should give the fuselage and the cockpit section a bit of extra strength as well. Okay, just get some glue all around. And yeah, looking at that, that's going to need a bit of filler. It's not a big job, but it's going to need a little bit of filler. But that's looking quite good. Now, the next fingers as well. We've got our tail section, which is a bit of a strange tail. Okay, it's quite a tight fit. You do have to give it a bit of a squeeze down, but it does fit. Okay, now I have done a bit of sanding and test fitting with this piece, because this piece is two separate pieces that have been glued together, okay? And when you stick it, try to push it down on here, it doesn't quite go. And what I did was I just got like a nice little metal file, and I was just sanding. There's like 4 little tabs in here that you can sand away at, and it just makes it fit a little bit better, okay? And after doing that, it does slide onto our little piece here a lot easier and nicer. However, with this tail as well, there was one strange thing where the plastic, you actually get a gap, okay? You actually need to actually bend this bit of a plastic bit here to actually touch and for you to glue, okay? Now that created a bit of a problem. So what I like to do in situations like this is glue where it all fits nicely, where my finger is, okay? It all fit nicely there, no real problems. But then we had this little bit here which needs to kind of be pushed in and bent to glue. So all I like to do is I like to glue where it is nicely wanting to glue, let that dry, and then we can simply come in now, push these two pieces together, okay, and we don't have to worry about the rest of it coming apart, because when we push this we create stress on this end. So while we're trying to, you know, press down on this here to glue it into place, this end's popping up and everything. But by this being all nice and glued and dried, we can then have a second go at gluing at where we need to push that down. So okay, it kind of makes things a little bit more time consuming waiting for stuff to dry, but you know, it does help glue things better. So we can leave that to glue, and then this can be attached onto our fuselage section, okay? There is actually one more piece that I've almost forgot. We've got P1, which also goes here, which can also help glue our fuselage section and cockpit section together. I'll just orientate it to make sure we've got it the right way around. No, that was the right way around first. Okay, and that's not a bad fit, this piece isn't, actually. It's not bad, but again, it's looking like it needs just that little bit of filler again. It's not like over bad, shall we say, gaps that need to be filled in. It's just a lot of little gaps that just need that bit of attention with this kit, which is a bit of a shame, but I think it's a bit of an old kit as well, so can't have everything. There we go, and that's all nicely on there. So that could be nicely dried, and we can fill, sand and scribe all that. A tail section's done. Now we've got our elevators here as well. Just make sure I'm going to get that right orientation, just checking the instructions. Okay, that goes, yeah, that goes that side. Now with these are a bit of a off fit as well. Okay, I mean, you could put it up to the light, say, and try and look through and see how much of a gap there is, and there is, you know, quite a bit of a gap going on there. Okay, so what you want to do is maybe make these little tabs that you glue this elevator to the to our fuselage section maybe a bit thinner, you know, doing a bit of a blade sanding, shall we say. Just make sure there's no bits of flash or sticky up bits that could be getting in the way, which just makes it rise that, you know, that little tiny bit of a mill. Okay, and that's what I'm just doing there. Anything that looks like it's just going to stick it up a little bit. Okay, so that looks good, so hopefully this will now go into place, and it's still not brilliant, so we're going to kind of just have to accept we're going to have to come in and do a bit of filling here as well. So let's get our glue in. Now, as much as I'd like to say leave these off, okay, because if the more pieces you can leave off till the end, the easier spraying and weathering and all that kind of stuff is. And that's looking nice and straight, and at a 90-degree angle, okay. And actually, now I've applied the glue, I think the glue was actually done a bit of filling here and has got rid of that gap, so we might get away with not filling this, okay. We'll see how that dries, okay, and I'm going to leave it up like this so we don't get this kind of going up, our elevator moving a degree or something in another angle. And once that's had a bit of time to dry, so it's, you know, it's not going to move anywhere, we can then put our second elevator on. Okay, so I'm going to cut away, and we need to give a few of these things a bit of time to dry before we can move along and everything, and we'll get on with the next stage. Right then, this filler's had a bit of time to dry, and what I've done is I've already done this wing all done. Now I've had to, as you see, we've filled it in pretty well, and I've had to really give this a damn good sanding, and then I've rescribed it, and it's actually looking quite good now. We'll do a bit of test painting to see how good it is, but that is feeling quite nice. Okay, so I'm just going to show you what I did with our not finished side of our wing. Now with this, I find that it's a bit easier to use a skinny stick, just so that you can make sure that you're not coming in with, say, you know, a big skinny stick and really going for it. Because with this, because if you remember, we had quite a bit of a lip this side, and it kind of went down this side, and coming in with a big sanding stick, you don't want to kind of change the curvature of it and have kind of sanding lumps. Okay, so by coming in with a mini sanding stick, okay, a skinny stick, you know, we can kind of control what we sand down. Okay, and you want to come in with a nice coarse skinny stick. And whereas before with sanding, okay, we say with a skinny stick, come in nice and light and just kind of lightly remove the filler and then go through your grades. But because we've got such a big lip, okay, you really want to come in pretty hard, pretty tough, and really try and sand that lip out by sanding the plastic down and getting the same level as getting both the engine and the wing section nice and at the same level. So you've really got to come in and do some serious sanding. Okay, now this is going to take a bit of time to really kind of sand this out, and I don't want to bore you because we have covered quite a bit of shall we say filling, sanding and scribing, so I think you kind of get the picture. Just really get in there and really try and remove this lip here by really getting in there, and you know, just follow what I've shown you with going through the grits, and you know, if it needs a bit more filling, after doing a bit of filling, sanding, scribing, fill it again. We'll kind of work your way through, say, the different mister surfaces. So just to kind of show you what else I did also where this one of these flaps went here, it's got a few slight gaps, so by coming along with the Fuselage plastic putty, what you do is you just nice and precisely glue in where you've got any gaps. Okay, and as you can see, you can really nice and precisely apply this nice plastic Fuselage plastic putty, which is really nice. And then with a moistened cotton wool bud, you can just wipe this away while it's still wet, okay, and give yourself a nice fill without basically having to come along afterwards and sanding out this filler, okay, which is a nice little technique that I like to use for like little gaps like this where I don't want to be sanding away detail and, you know, then having to rescribe everything, when it's just nice and easy to apply and wipe. Okay, don't let this stuff dry because you won't be able to wipe it away so easy, but it is really nice and easy just to do this. Okay, and there's a lot of applications you can do for this, like canopies and all sorts of stuff where you don't want to be coming along and doing any sanding. Okay, and now, I mean, that is all nicely filled in across here. Okay, and that was just, I mean, it was more or less, it was just a nice way of just tidying up what was, shall we say, a little bit of a not so good kind of gluing along this flap here. And we, as you can see with the white, you've just nicely filled that in, and we don't have to sand away at that. We can come along with a little P-cutter, and you might notice that in some of the recessed panel lines a bit of this plastic putty's gone in there. All you do is you can just nicely, lightly, very lightly with the P-cutter remove any unwanted filler. Okay, you don't need templates for this because the recesses are already there, you're just removing filler. Okay, and that sorts that out, same as this side. As I say, I'll do this off camera because I think I've showed you enough sanding, and I'll get that nice, just like this one here. It's all looking nice now, all scribed around, which actually, to note, these are very nice rivet markers. It's not actually what I used to use. I used to use just like a pin on a I've got one here. I use this for drilling, and this is kind of like a cheaper version of a drill, hand drill. And what I did is I just put in like a little sewing needle, and I used to just come along wherever there was rivets and just apply a bit of pressure and make a little rivet hole. However, you can get these for like 1 in 48 aircraft. I think you can get them in for 1 in 32nd aircraft as well. And what it is, it may look like a pin, but there is like a little tiny hole right at the end of the pin. So what you end up with is, shall we say, a circular rivet. So it makes it look like there's a rivet hole there, but then in the middle of that rivet is like what can kind of represent a bolt or a screw or something like that. Really nice bit of tools. I forgot where I got it from, but I think you can get it from Models Argo, and I've even forgot the price as well. But you can just nicely apply that, and you do get this nice kind of rivet detail that looks like bolts and screws and stuff. So it really does make a nice little bit of a difference. Okay, and that's really nice, and I did that around there, and I'm going to do it around here as well. I've also got on our elevators and our tail on here, but we've got some gaps we want to sort out. And again, this is where the plastic putty by Vallejo comes in really nice, because I mean, we could come along and we could apply our usual, say, green putty and mist the surfaces and stuff, but then we would have to sand away at these 90-degree angles, which getting a sanding stick in here to try and get that nice and neatened off is going to be time, work. It is tricky, and I don't think you get so much of a good finish because you're trying to sand into it right into the corner of that 90-degree angle that's going on. But with the plastic putty, we can apply this to our gap like so. Nice, easy application. Moisten cotton wool bud, and you can just nicely wipe away the excess, and it just saves you a hell of a lot of trouble trying to get in there and neaten off what little gaps there might be in this 90-degree angle here. Okay, and the cotton wool bud, you can nicely work it into that gap, and as you can see, the white plastic putty and the grey plastic, you can actually see how that's gone nicely into the gap, and it's just neatened it all off nice and easy. Okay, and you can just keep doing that until you've got it all nice how you want it, and it's a really nice easy technique that I kind of just ended up accidentally kind of trying it out once, and found out that this was actually a really nice technique to do. Let's get a clean cotton wool bud. Okay, and just wipe away the excess that's going on around here. One sec. Okay, and there we go. That is going to look a lot nicer than if you left it, or if you tried to fill it with this stuff and tried to sand it away, and that was a million times quicker than trying to sand at it. So I'm going to do that now all around here, on all the elevators and the tail, and get that all nice. Remember, just come in with your pea cutter, remove whatever's gone into your recessed panel lines. With this pea cutter, a bit of a shame, but you can't actually get it right up to the 90-degree angle. You just can't quite get in there, although I can just slightly at this angle, but you just can't quite get in. If you can't do that, maybe use a bit of a pin like this, and you could just scrape out any excess plastic putty that may have got in there, just to tidy that up so all your recessed panel lines haven't been filled in by the plastic putty. The other thing as well is we glued in our cockpit area to our fuselage section, and that's had a nice good like 24 hours to dry, and it's actually not that bad a fit. I'm finding that I don't really have to do any filling actually, when I thought I would. And the reason why we don't need to fill as well is because where the join lines are actually make nice recessed panel lines. So what I like to do in these cases is just to follow the join lines, okay, and kind of tidy up the join lines to make it look like a nice recessed panel line. And by doing that, it saves us coming along and filling, sanding, and then scribing it in, when really you can get away with nicely just following the join line and scribing in a recess panel line. Okay, now one thing you got to remember when doing this, okay, you've got to make sure that it is dry, okay, because although it might seem dry, say after a couple of hours, you come in with your pea cutter and actually the plastic is it's sort of dry but it's soft, okay, and your pea cutter will just like cut into it, and it'll be like trying to pull up bits of gooey kind of soft plastic. So you've got to make sure that is dry. I mean, you're talking at least a day, if not 3 days, depending on, you know, how hot your room is or whatever. Okay, so make sure it is proper dry, and once it's proper dry, you can nicely scribe in. You can't nicely scribe in if it's even remotely wet, remotely soft. It's just not going to work. And if you've got a nice kind of join line, you probably, like I am here, can get away with not using templates. You can just follow your join line, okay, and get that nicely scribed as a panel line. Okay, just like this. Okay, just a bit of a tricky bit here. And the same goes for underneath, which, to be honest with you, I've already done. Okay, now I did forget to mention, before I did all that scribing, I did give it a little bit of a sand just to tidy up the plastic around it. It wasn't a heavy sanding, it was just a light sanding, and then do a bit of scribing. So I've got a bit of work to do now off camera with all this kind of filling around here with Fuselage plastic putty, you know, tidy up this last kind of engine area here, and then we can get on with actually bringing this together by putting our wings in, which are going to be, shall we say, problematic. Okay, this could be a bit of a potential fit issue from what I've kind of tested with dry fitting, so I'll get back to you when we start to put these onto our fuselage section. Right then, so I've done all that kind of nice Fuselage plastic putty in and around here, and it looks nice. Okay, next thing is our bomb racks and bombs. Now I've already glued these together because it's the same kind of filling, sanding, scribing I've already showed you. But what I like to do is to come along and just drill a nice 1mm hole into our free-fall bomb here. Okay, now what this is, where I'm drilling it is where it's actually going to sit on the bomb rack, so you're not going to see that hole, but what it does is it gives us a nice opportunity to stick a cocktail stick into that hole, and we can nice and easily spray, decal, finish that up, and then glue it to the model right at the end. And we can put that onto a polystyrene little base here it's just polystyrene, and I'll stick anything on here that's on cocktail sticks and that kind of stuff. So I'll do the other three of these later. Now the actual bomb racks that these go on were actually a bit of an iffy fit. Okay, and this is the problem. Something like this, these bomb racks here, I'd rather leave them till last, after everything's all done, and then stick them down then, because these bomb racks are going to get in the way, and it's going to be a bit tricky kind of you know, putting weathering into the panel lines, and it just makes it a bit more awkward. But the problem is, because they don't fit so well, we've got to put them on at this stage, because as you can see I've had to put pegs down and stuff, and this is something we don't want to be doing right at the end when everything's done. They've had chance to dry, and they look nice now after putting that little bit of effort in of putting pegs down and stuff, which is the kind of stuff you don't want to be doing, as I say, at the end. So they've had to go on now, which is a little bit awkward, but it's not exactly impossible. It just makes it easier if you can leave this kind of stuff off till last. Now comes the part of gluing in our wings. Now the wings do seem to be a bit problematic, okay, because we can't have like a complete straight angle going across. We need it to kind of come up a bit, okay, but we need to get it nice and level both sides, okay, at the same time, which is going to be a bit tricky, because by trying to get it nice and level both sides and everything, we're going to probably end up making gaps, and we're going to have gaps either way you play it, okay. So what I would like to do first is actually come along with some slow zap, okay. This is a CA glue, super glue, and what we want to do is we want to get the position right, okay, before we start coming in with Tamiya extra thin cement and start melting the plastic and everything. Because if you come along and use this stuff, one, it's not going to give you that bite straight away to hold that in position nicely straight away, okay. So it's going to be flopping a bit, and you're going to try and have to hold it into place. It's going to start getting gooey and messy as you try and play with it and try and keep it into place, okay. So we leave this till after. We want to get down some super glue in the right place that is just going to be, we're not talking about putting heaps of super glue down, we're talking about putting enough super glue down just to hold in position our wings, so then we can come in with a Tamiya extra thin cement. So I'm just using a cocktail stick just to puncture this super glue, and then I'm putting it, as you can see, on some, I think this is 16mm Tamiya tape, and quickly wipe off the super glue, okay, so as it should be good for next time. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to get some of this super glue. Now I've used the slow gap, okay, slow zap. The reason for this, okay, is we don't want it to glue immediately straight away. We want to be able to play with this so we can get it in the right position. All I've done is I've applied a bit of this super glue on our little join here, but not all the way around, so it seeps out the sides and we have to sand it down. It's just in that middle bit there, which is where we just want to hold it into position. Okay, so I'll now push that in. Now I have actually had a bit of super glue seep out, so I'll quickly try and wipe that away. But okay, hold on, I've got too much super glue on there, so I just want to try and get rid of it a bit. My hands are going to get a bit sticky now. Okay, get rid of a bit because we don't want it seeping, as I say, out the sides. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, and then you just want to make sure it's nicely lined up, and the best indication with this kit I'm finding is if you look at our landing gear here, okay, if you see that as a nice straight 90-degree angle to the fuselage, then you are looking good. Okay, and that has got a nice upward angle, and our landing gear is looking at a nice 90-degree angle, so that looks good. Right, now that has just nicely glued into place, okay, so I can actually hold that and it's not going anywhere, compared to if we use Tamiya extra thin cement, okay, we'd have to hold this for quite a bit of time for it to have that bite to hold itself. Okay, now it looks good on top, but as I thought, we've got some pretty nasty gaps going on in there, so we're gonna have to take care of them. But what we want to do is we want to get our second one on, and we're going to do the same thing and try not to apply too much super glue this time. Okay, this isn't about getting strength, this is just about giving it enough bite for you to just hold it into position for when you actually come along and do the real gluing with the Tamiya extra thin. Okay, again we'll push that in, it looks good on top. Although we're getting a bit of gappage going on, and I want to try and take care of that, but I don't think we can. Okay, just making sure it's lined up, and yeah, our landing gear looks at 90 degrees, it looks the same either side. Now you want to make sure you get this right, okay, you know, take your time, don't rush this part, okay, because there's nothing worse than having a weirdly out of place set of wings. Okay, Just making sure. I think with this one we need a quick bit of zapper gap. Sorry, not zapper gap, some vital bond, which is basically a kicker. Try and get that in there to try and get this super glue to dry a bit quicker. Oh crikey, that's a bit potent. Yeah, I'm finding that this needs a bit of pressure to get it in position. Yeah, I think that's looking good now. Do you know what? I don't think actually we've got enough super glue in there, because that is kind of wobbling. Okay, so I'm going to come in and apply some more super glue. And the reason why that hasn't like bit down nicely is because I'm trying not to put too much super glue on, because the super glue isn't what we want it to hold together. As I say, I just want it to bite and hold the position. Okay, but as a result I've ended up not putting enough down. And actually what I've ended up doing is creating a bit of a problem, which you might also have this problem, so it doesn't hurt to show you. And what the problem is the super glue was dried. Okay, it hasn't glued it, but it's dried enough to create a problem of not being able to put this back on. So I'm just chopping away at what super glue's on here so that we can actually glue it down. Okay, now I've just applied all that super glue on there, which is probably creating a problem as well. Okay, so we're just going to chop away at this super glue now and get it off, which is a bit of a pain, but it's not really that hard because it is in an inconspicuous place, a place that isn't going to be seen, so you can just really give this, you know, just a nice quick chop and just get rid of all the nasty dried up super glue.